Would you like to balance the game without the pro play influence? I mean, I would be nice. I think what I'd actually prefer is ways to get pros to pick different things. Because pro play is actually really good for League of Legends. It's quite fun to watch, makes characters do cool things. I think pro play is generally positive for League. I think it has some really negative effects on some champions though. And so my preference is if we had ways to force pros to play different champions. That's what I'd rather do. So that way we wouldn't have to be as aggressively nerfing characters like, say, Azir. So as an example, what's it called? Is it called Fearless Draft? There's like some region that tried the thing where it's like, in a series, you can't pick the same champion multiple times. It's not called Fearless Draft, right? It's called something else. Or is it Fearless? Yeah, so it's like, so that's the thing, is like, I'd rather have a solution like that, where it's like, here's something that forces pro players to pick different characters. Because the hard part about like pro play balancing is that pro play balancing isn't necessarily even, it's not necessarily even based on power. Like there's a lot of like bandwagoning that goes into it, and just like, deep invested practice time, things like that. So instead of having to like aggressively tune around pro from a champion side, which we should still do from time to time, I'd rather there was more like safeguards in place to ensure that different picks happen. I think that would be better. But overall, I'd say pro play is good for League of Legends, and so it is important that pro play be interesting, varied, and balanced and fun. So I think there's some major costs though when it comes to champions. I think one of the biggest costs actually that I really, really heavily dislike, and I would like change in an instant if I could, is the fact that pro play makes it so that a lot of champions can't be flex picked. And flex picking, in my opinion, is just a big win for players generally. Flex picking, for those of you who don't know, is like when a champion go into multiple roles. That's generally really positive for a lot of champions, but we've had to remove flex picking from so many characters purely because it's a pro play draft advantage. And so if that wasn't the case, there's a lot more characters that could just be in multiple roles all the time. Why does the audience not like variety? That is not what we've experienced. We generally find that the players do like variety in pro play. Players meaning the people who watch the game. We generally find that when a character is in pro play for too long, it gets stale, and players start getting the feeling that that character is really boring and really lame and super poorly balanced, and like it kind of like carries over into the rest of the game. So we generally think that there is a pretty real pressure to give pro play variety, as well as like move the meta along and not make it stand in one place for super long amounts of time, as we found that players tend to get frustrated when they see the same thing in pro day in, day out for months at a time. So yeah. Can you provide some insight into the VIEGO buffs? Not right now. We haven't decided what we're going to do yet. We'll say that we wouldn't want to buff him too much because he's actually pretty decent in solo queue, like a decent spot in solo queue as well as like jungle. One of the things we've been talking about does not mean we're going to do it. One of the things we've been talking about is like, should we do anything to lane VIEGO? That's a character who used to be very present way back in the day, but we deliberately deleted it because of pro play flex picking. But that was a very different world with a very different VIEGO, and so it might be like okay for him to be in lane again. Comparison would be like how now we're buffing Sylas jungle, and for a while we just wouldn't let Sylas jungle because of pro play flex picking, but nowadays it's like different Sylas, not as dominant in pro, probably allowed to be flex picked again, and so we've buffed Sylas jungle a few times. So yeah, who knows? But yeah, basically though, if we do end up buffing VIEGO, anything we did to him would be relatively small because he doesn't have a lot of room, I don't think. He's pretty close to it. He's already in a somewhat decent spot, but his pro presence is fairly low compared to historical rates, and he's got some cool things. So who knows? That's the thing about this patch. If y'all are looking at this patch and you're like, why is Riot buffing all these characters? This is the MSI patch, and before a major tournament, we'll sometimes do changes that might not be perfect for solo queue. When I say perfect for solo queue, like maybe a character's already in a fine spot in solo queue, but for a MSI or a Worlds patch, we'll sometimes do changes that might not be perfect for solo queue, just to nudge a character in a direction and get like pro players thinking about them, because you know that can create a lot of like value for the meta of those tournaments. So yeah, that's, if you're wondering, looking at this patch and being like, why are they buffing all these characters? A lot of them are looking at them and thinking, like if we buff this character in a certain way, maybe that's gonna like add some good variety or feel to the pro meta for MSI. Have you ever thought about running pro play on a different patch? I mean, we could. The problem though is that like one of the values of League of Legends is the thing that Faker is doing, technically you could do it. I mean, it's not completely true because Faker's in voice chat with his team and he's practiced with them for hundreds of hours. But technically the thing that Faker is doing, you could do, right? And so there's value in those things matching, right? Like when Insec makes the big Lee Sin play, you can do that exact same thing in solo queue, technically, right? And so we think there's value in the two game states looking alike. There's also a slippery slope thing that can go on where it's like, we split the game between pro and normal, right? And then suddenly we're in this weird spot where it's like we never actually balance characters in normal play for like the highest level of the game, because we're just like, we'll just split the patch. And then suddenly like years later, Akali like does 50% less damage in pro, and it's like the character doesn't even look the same. Like players already complain about this in like say Aram, right? Whereas like there's certain characters in Aram who just don't even feel like themselves because of how like different their balance states are between Aram and mainline League of Legends, right? And so Aram's an example of like how sometimes doing a specific a different balance patch can actually end up having like creating like different characters, and that can be like negative as well. So there's some risk there. So yeah, generally I think it's good that like the pro and normal game tend to have the same balance.